So, Hillary,
Hello.
it's so good for us to have some time to talk about I.AM.INSTITUte.
It's great.
Yeah. So, I just want to start with making sure that our audience know that I.AM.INSTITUte is a monthly conversation. So,
Yes.
it's a monthly conversation that we have, and our focus is on challenges and issues that are unique to Black and Brown women.
hmm
Now, this month we're doing something a little different because of the election, but in general, we focus specifically on how we can overcome some of those challenges.
Yes.
Yeah. You've been a part of I.AM.INSTITUte since
Like the beginning.
the beginning.
The beginning.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So tell me about your experience coming in and just meeting with the team and working with the
Sure.
team.
So I think you started with the I.AM. Institute as the experiences of Black and Brown women.
Yeah.
And so instantly I think about positionality. And I think about the positionality that I bring because I do not identify as a Black or Brown woman, but yet was invited to join into the conversations. And I think even I was like, "Are you sure you want me there? Like,
Yeah.
are you sure?"
Yeah.
And you were like, yes, we
Yeah.
need you there. We
Yeah.
need you there. And I had to instantly do some self-reflection of thinking of how I'm going to show up in this space because
Why is this space different than any other space that you?
Sure. I
you've been
would say that the majority of the spaces that people may find themselves in are white dominated spaces. And so I wanted to make sure that my whiteness wasn't going to be dominant in this conversation. I didn't want it to become centered myself. You have to be very careful of white women tears or white fragility. And I also think you have to watch out for white domination because many times even a certain question could be asked, or if I came in with a statement, that it could then switch the whole conversation so that people didn't feel like they were safe to share.
Yeah.
And so I really had to start thinking about how I was going to show up in this conversation. I like to do that. I actually think of that in most spaces that I enter into and think about, okay, how is my whiteness showing up today?
Yeah.
Or what did I do? What can I do better next time? And so I remember doing the first planning meeting and I think you'd asked me to speak and I still was like, are you sure you want me to speak? And you're like, yes, I want you to speak. And I had something planned and we did the planning meeting and I was like, I need to go back to the drawing board. So it was really good because it was a stretch in thinking completely different because I thought I knew how I was going to like enter into this conversation and then meeting this wonderful women of just thinkers, collaborators, their experiences, perspectives. I went back and rewrote what I was going to write. And I will be honest with you, I'm not a person that writes down things before I speak. I usually kind of just speak off the cuff and find that I'm much better that way than like attending to a script. Probably drives a lot of people nuts, but that's just what I have found. I can write something out and then I'm not even really going to follow
use it.
So I had to really be thinking about how I was going to show up in this space. And so I'd written something down. I'm sure I didn't say everything word for word because that isn't typically my style, but I needed to have
at least
some of
type
those
of
bullet
structure.
points down and things to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And then, so then we meet like a second time and as a planning committee for the meetings. And I'm like, am I sure that I'm supposed to be in this space? And I watched what happened is that we really kind of like gelled together. What was really cool is we had a lot of, in the planning sessions, just a lot of sidebar conversations that may or may not even have been on the topic. But then we kind of formed this team together. And then on Saturday mornings, the third Saturday at 11 a.m., we come together and we get to hear people share their stories. And things that really had stood out to me. We had a conversation about being the only woman of color.
Yeah, I remember that. That was pretty powerful.
It was a really powerful story. And I remember going, I don't really know what I will share because I have not had that experience.
Right.
And I always like to be upfront with that. Where there are multiple experiences that I have not had that we frequently talk about at I.AM. Institute.
Yeah.
But what I do like to try to bring in is the perspective of a white ally, of somebody, a mentor. I think you use that word mentor quite often.
Like that.
I think that's a great phrase. And while we should not leave it on people of color to do the education of white people, like it's not your job, I do think that there are some instances and some experiences that white people have never had to think about before.
Yeah. You know, when we first started talking about you had to go back and rewrite because you needed to show up differently. What's interesting is from a Black female, I'm always writing. Before I leave out the door, I'm preparing that writing. So I think about my hair. Do I come out with my hair straight today because I'm going to this type of event and these people are going to be there? Or can I come out with my hair just natural because it's going to be less offensive, it's going to stop a lot of hesitation, people will embrace me a little bit more. So I always write my script. So I think that that's the difference that you see from individuals of color, where when you leave out of your home, you don't necessarily leave out the same person that you are inside the home.
Wow. Like
So,
that's powerful. I don't have to have that conversation. Many times the conversation I may have to have is, I don't want to dominate this conversation. I think about I know we had one session on microaggressions, and I have done training on microaggressions. Like, I remember coming to the practice session, like, listen, I've got this one.
Right?
I've got this one down.
This one I got.
This one I can do.
Right.
But then I realized, though, all of the conversations I've had about microaggressions have been in a white dominant space. I haven't had to have, I haven't had conversations where it was led by a Black woman in a predominantly Black setting.
Right.
And so I've done even further learning, even deeper learning, because most of my training, because I felt like, oh, I've got this. And while I may be able to tell you what a microaggression is, and I can explain to you the definition of a microaggression, and I can even give you an example of a microaggression, but the difference came into the ladies who have experienced it. And I don't have all of those experiences. And the other part is I sit and think about, how do I respond to microaggressions when I see it? And I think about the feelings that go behind it. I know we had somebody talk about who had shared that they had gotten up and done public speaking and written a speech, and somebody else had gotten credit for it.
Right.
And I just remember that's never happened to me. And then how do I continue to show up with my privilege and my whiteness to then advocate for the person who has a microaggression? That was a very different perspective that I had with I.AM. Institute.
Well, I can't say that I.AM. Institute has learned from you, and specifically, I'll speak about myself. I know there were some different terminology that you used, and I had not heard it, but not really registered. And so one of the techniques that you use is where you will call out and you'll call in.
Call in versus call out.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, that technique and why that's valuable.
Yeah. So a call in, there's two things. So a call in versus a call out. A call in is when I come alongside with somebody who may have made a comment. And this is a little bit more of a private conversation. It may happen like after a training, or may happen after a conversation has completed, that I might go up to somebody and be like, hey, just want to give you a little bit of feedback, or hey, wanted to touch base with you. Usually starts off with the word hey, as I hear myself saying it, because I do try to like position myself very much not I don't want to come at it like, well, you know what you just said.
Right.
I want it to very much be like, let me come alongside
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And it'll be like a perhaps I wonder, like those and I'll even position my body that way so that it is not a confrontation at all. This is a learning moment. I've had to have a lot of conversations a lot about white fragility and white women tears. And I'll usually say like, hey, just want to give you a heads up, white women tears can really dominate a whole conversation and turn it to a way that you may not have intended to. Talk a lot about intent and impact, but it's calling in is coming alongside beside someone. I always assume good intent.
Right.
But I also want people to understand that their words and their actions had impact that they may not have seen because they haven't been made aware of it yet.
Right.
The difference with a call out is when I see something happening that is causing active harm and I have to stop what is being said instantly. Okay. And that can be, that's a little bit trickier. There's definitely a nuance to that.
Yeah.
But I have to have a call out when what is being said is actively harming someone. So a call out example would be when a person, here's a great example. So this was in a meeting that I just led recently, and somebody had used a phrase that was used out in the media sources that really didn't need to be repeated, and the person like actually repeated the exact phrase word for word. And I usually will say, hold on, I'm going to stop you right there. That's something that I will kind of like, I always have the phrases in my head ready to go so that they can be used in any situation. But hold on, I'm going to stop you right there because I don't think you realize the harm that's going to come out. This is something when somebody else says, I don't mean to be racist. I don't mean this sentence to be racist, but, and then I'll be like, stop.
Yeah.
Like that's, and I've said, nope, if you have to send your sentence with a precursor of, I don't mean to sound racist, but then I'm going to stop you right there.
Right. So does call out and call in and call out, is there a direct relationship with impact and intent?
I can't help but wonder, yes, I think a little bit. So if I call somebody in on something that they may have said that they didn't understand the impact of it, then I will say something. If I think, not that they intend to do harm, but when you have those precursor of words, I'm like, hold on, this is not going to go well. You might want to think about this one.
Right.
That's usually when I'll be like, I'm going to stop you right there. Right. And I try to always have those phrases in my head all ready to go because you never know when you're going to need them.
Right.
But a call out is like stopping the harm before it occurs or while it's occurring, so someone can't continue on saying that trail that they should not be saying.
Yeah, I think so. Those are some things or some techniques that I wasn't familiar with. So those are really great because I've taken those things and I've incorporated them in some of the work that I do. But I also think about, some of the conversations that we've had, and although you say that it took you a while to kind of just come in and feel free, but it seems like the conversations are things that you're familiar with every day, as well as stories that you've heard, so that your voice lends to make the conversation more rich, and it also helps to provide solutions. Because really, I.AM.INSTITUte, not only are we bringing these conversations to the table, but we want to find solutions.
Right.
So I see that a lot of what we talk about are things that you've always been able to add positive solutions for us to not necessarily resolve, but move through those situations more in a more positive.
I try to bring that along.
Yeah.
I will 100% say that just in my own personal life, I had to do a lot of learning and reflection and self-evaluation before I started to say anything. Because I realized that the information that I bring is a lot more book knowledge or things I've had to read. They aren't necessarily things I've had to experience. Now, as I've had more practice in calling in and calling out people or more conversations talking about equity, I have been able to bring some personal experience conversations to I.AM. But I also try to bring a perspective of, oh no, this is how people have been enculturated, so this is why it is coming up. But you'll definitely see me I enter in conversations from a very intellectual viewpoint. I have done study with Glenn Stingleton's Courageous Conversations, and he has a compass of how you enter in conversations. And I will tell you, I enter in very intellectual. So I always have to be a little careful to be like, well, have you read this book? Or did you just see this video? Because that comes in from that intellectual point of view. And realizing across the compass is the emotional point of view. And people are bringing heavy emotions with them. And so what I try to bring is a perspective of, let me explain, this is the enculturation that has happened and why this probably happened this way. And then we can start to figure out a way to combat together. Because it just continues to bring in multiple perspectives.
I think it's a great blend, because when you look at I.AM.INSTITUTE, the purpose of this platform is to give women a voice. And sometimes there's not always a solution. But it is to give them a voice. It's also to allow, their voices to be heard by other women. And so that right there helps to provide them with a sense of support, just someone else hearing my story. And everyone has story. Everyone has multiple stories. But what you bring to the table, in addition to, hearing those voices, hearing the emotion, you can bring some of that historical, intellectual knowledge. But when you blend that together with the emotions, with those experiences, it helps us come to solutions so that we as minorities don't feel that we're always going to be under this weight, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I used to say, and that light is not a train. So knowing that we're not here just to survive, that's not what we want. We are looking for solutions to help us thrive and to become better, and our generations to become better. So I love the combination, because it is emotional. It is, I call it not only emotional, but it's a healing. So it's an emotional healing to be able to share your story, and then to have a group of women or a group of individuals, because sometimes we have men on our conversation that will appreciate and acknowledge that experience. And many times I will just speak from a personal perspective, going through situations, you're shameful, you're embarrassed, you feel less than, and many times you don't let those words come out of your mouth. You don't want the experience to hit the air for someone else to hear it, because you're afraid that they're going to receive it very different. Yeah.
And they probably will.
Yeah. And I know that, there's different situations where, depending on your audience, people will question, did that really happen? Are you sure? Did you not just make this up? Um, so I.AM.INSTITUTE provides a platform where it's non-judgmental and it is your story.
Right.
And as you express your story, we're going to appreciate what you have told us and also appreciate and acknowledge the emotions and the feelings and everything that goes along with that story. So, yeah.
I think that it's great with I.AM.INSTITUTE. Like, I always feel like I belong.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
always feel like um, people are there to be authentic,
Yeah.
which is invaluable.
Yeah.
I also appreciate that there are people across different time zones,
Yes.
across different countries.
I love my Canada
I know, I was just gonna say, even in Canada, like just like 5 hours away from here, it's completely different. And the experiences are different. And you wouldn't necessarily think that, but yet it really is.
There's still that bond, and there's still so many things that are similar that connects. And I also think the other piece is that we're women. There's a different bond that you get with a group of women that you don't necessarily get when you have a combined group, when you have men who are part of that group. So
we've had men part of our group, and it's been great.
We absolutely have, and I will say my husband is one of our supporters, and his perspective really helps to educate us, as well as it gives us an opportunity to understand how the other side is viewing things, and we need that support.
Right.
Like we need to work collectively. So it's not about isolating. It is about coming together and being able to look at these challenges and how we can overcome these challenges as a society.
And it brings another perspective.
Absolutely.
And that's what it's all about. To me, that's what I.AM.INSTITUTE is all about, is bringing about more perspectives.
Right. We did a segment on Muslim, and so we had two ladies that were just awesome and very free with telling us about their experience here in the U.S.
Right. Yes. So the experience was as two followers of Islam, and what their experience has been in a predominantly, if you look at our calendar, like it is a predominantly Christian based, with holidays and what stores are closed which days. And so listening to the experiences of religious diversity, because our country is full of religious diversity, but whose voices get uplifted and whose do not. And so we had two wonderful women come and talk about their experiences in a predominantly Christian-dominated calendar year. And what does that look like during Ramadan? What does that look like with Eid? What does that look like sitting in a school cafeteria? What does that look like sitting with your friends at a restaurant? And just all of the experiences that they have.
Just some of the things that we take for granted. And even me as a minority, just address, and how you're judged by...
If you wear a hijab. Or you don't wear a hijab.
Yeah. And so just some of those things that we just don't necessarily think about, how they can negatively impact a person and make that person feel isolated and disconnected. And what I love about their stories is, even in that isolation, how there was hope, and not only hope, but there was action to change that environment and to bring people in. And you said something earlier about it's not your job to educate, but part of my thinking is it is my job. I believe that there is a work for each one of us wherever we're at, because we are so different, to talk about how we're different, but
Mhm.
also talk about those similarities, because that is also what gives us that common ground. But if I don't tell you, who else is gonna tell you?
I agree. I think some of the power in is coming from moving outside my echo chamber, but also I went to the mosque because I felt like I needed to learn more.
Yeah.
And I have been to the mosque several times, but the very first time I went to the mosque, it was very eye-opening because I had been working with young people, and it was during Ramadan, and wudu is when you wash before you pray. And our students were really trying to make sure that they were following all of that. And as an 8-year-old does, like, you know, when you are with water and they were washing their feet
Yeah.
in a sink that was like higher than their waist,
yeah.
and you know, like you have young people trying to get their foot up into a sink, and it was there was some water, and
Yeah.
I had just brought in some towels of like, because I didn't want anybody to fall.
Right.
But I could experience that. But what really changed a viewpoint for me is when I went to the mosque and was in a restroom and saw that sinks were on the floor, so that wudu was much easier for young people, for people. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I'm asking a child to do something that they have never ever been taught to do, nor is it equipped for them, because like I said, the sinks were like above their waist, and they're trying to get their foot in there, because this is how meaningful and deeply passionate they are, that they want to make sure they are following things exactly. But did we have things set up that would made it just like they do at home or at mosque? And I was like, we are asking somebody to do something that they've never had to do before. And so that's when my whole perspective changed. But that learning wouldn't have happened unless I went there.
Yeah.
And so that's when I say, like, that's when the learning does become my responsibility, because somebody could have sat and told me all of this, and I'd have been like, yeah, but there's water on the floor. I'm just going to bring some towels in, as opposed to like actually seeing structures in place that I went, oh, I'm asking somebody to do something they've never had to do before. And so it's not set up well. And so like that's the learning that never would have happened unless I had gone to a mosque. And then I've also learned that when you go to a mosque, people feel so much more comfortable seeing you there and saying, oh my goodness, you're here to learn.
Wow.
Like, thank you for being here. I have people who have said, I'm going to make hummus tomorrow for you because I know you love hummus. And that's the difference. And that's when you see this like shift in relationship too. Because I can know you from an intellectual standpoint, but when I get to know you from an emotional standpoint, that's when the bond really truly begins.
And that's relationship.
That's relationship.
So that's relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what your thoughts are about I.AM.INSTITUTE and how you see this platform changing viewpoints or helping people get out of their echo chamber. How do you see I.AM supporting that?
I think that has been a huge benefit of I.AM.INSTITUTE, because it has brought in a different perspective. And then what is also great is in the chat session too, like people will be like, look at this website, here's this website. And you have been able to collect all of those websites and email them out. Because I remember somebody talking about human trafficking in Canada. And I was not as familiar with what was happening in Canada as much as I am in Columbus. And when websites were being posted and conversation was happening, it also gave me time to go back and reflect, later on as well, because we're only there for an hour.
Yeah.
But I was able to go back and read more and listen more. And that's when you start to like continue to grow, because as we said, it shouldn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you. I can learn what is happening in Canada. What I can learn what's happening with trafficking. I can learn what's happening in Indigenous communities.
Right.
That I have not had the experience of like firsthand conversations, but through learning and through the growth and through hearing other people's experiences, I can continue to grow.
Yeah, I'm so inspired by my Canadian friends and also their support. What I have heard from those ladies is that it has been a healing for them. So when we think, that our challenges are different, um, they're not the same, but still, even in the differences, they see a healing and they see an uplifting. One of the ladies said, I look forward to that third Saturday in a month where I get to hear. And most of her time, she's at work. So it's a hear, so she doesn't necessarily get to put input, but just being able to hear the stories and talk through things have been beneficial to people. So I'm excited about that.
It's truly a healing place.
Yeah.
And it's a place where it's safe.
Yeah.
Other voices are uplifted and stories are shared. People are sharing pieces of themselves. And that's just huge. Like, you've created a great space where people are authentic. People feel confident knowing that when what they put out is going to be well treasured and well cared for. And so there's just so much growth that goes into it.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking to do more with I.AM.INSTITUTE. Definitely you being a part of the team has been so beneficial. It's opened up more ideas and provided a lot of creativity on how we can branch out and I believe call in, because again, we're in our world and our preference and where we're comfortable. So it's been a great opportunity for I.AM. to kind of step out and call in other individuals that we don't associate with every day. You see, but you don't have relationships. And so the purpose that I want to continue is building that network, but also broadening that network. And I love the fact that people are coming to the table. We're not judged. And I also think that the group of women that come, they know they're here to appreciate. They know they're here to affirm. And when we have the conversations, there's no discord. It is all like, let's just kind of talk through it and let's be healers to each other. So I really like that piece.
I think it's a great space. No one is ever like shamed and no one is ever negated. And that's, you can't find that in every space that you go in, because a lot of times people will hear somebody's stories and will say, oh, for sure that did not really happen. Or you're just exaggerating this. And
you're too sensitive.
You're so oh, they didn't really mean it that way. And I think what is great about that has never once been said in I.AM.INSTITUTE, never even like alluded to in the I.AM.INSTITUTE. You have established a place of gratitude for people who are willing to share. And there are so many other people. I think of Gwen, just really creating space of true passion and joy and authenticity. Gwen does a great job of saying, thank you for leading with that. Thank you for sharing with that. Let's talk more about that. I hear the pain. I hear the passion in your voice. Let's talk more. And she does a great job leading that as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next generation. One of the goals that I have for I.AM.INSTITUTE is to reach those young women that are becoming new into the workforce, those young women who are becoming moms and, wives, and young women who are taking a stance
Yeah.
for their beliefs. And I want to be able to provide a platform for them to share their experiences and their voices, but also a platform where they feel empowered and courageous in what they're
Yes.
doing and not feeling ashamed. And so I think we can do that with some of the individuals that are with I.AM. Institute and who constantly come, just their wisdom and their knowledge.
Yes.
I think that is very important, that we don't forget that older generation, because although society looks different, tools that we have in society are different.
Yes.
Their experiences are still very relevant, and they can be the lessons that we get from their experience can be transferable into our experiences today.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's lots of like generational learning from each other.
Looking forward to it.
Yes.
All right. Well, Hillary, it's been great to have this conversation with you as
you.
usual, and we'll do it again in a couple
Absolutely.
weeks.
Sounds
All right.
great.
Thank
All
you.
right.